for joining us this afternoon. I know it's a special effort and people have come from far and wide, and we really appreciate you taking this time out on a Saturday afternoon. My name is Paramjit Kaur Matharu. I'm an executive member of the Sikh Council UK. In my day job, I'm a managing director with JP Morgan Chase Bank, and I am truly honored to have been given this opportunity to say a few words before we kick off the main session for today. This is the first time that the Sikh community has thought about creating this kind of discussion, which is an open community, broad spectrum of the diverse people of this land. And we wanted to make sure that we had an opportunity today. This is a year of many commemorations. As we all know, there is the huge, very respectful commemoration of the Great War, of the big sacrifice and ultimate sacrifice that has been made by many innocent people so that we can enjoy peace and harmony across the world. And for the Sikhs, this is also a very important year where we're marking 3 decades after a particularly painful chapter of history. And I think one of the things we wanted to do with this afternoon was to really reflect as a community on the broader message, after so much pain and sacrifice by many, the human endeavor is about creating peace and harmony and a spirit of brotherhood. And peace and brotherhood comes from, we all believe, I think, a common understanding of, the human cause and the need for us to live lives of compassion and sharing. And we thought that as a Sikh community, we wanted to have this discussion to celebrate and also to mark some of the heritage and history that makes us what we are today. Because I think to further the understanding of a broader community about each other, we have to understand each other a little bit more and to be able to appreciate the different flavors that make us the big spicy aroma that we are. I think we are very fortunate in the UK that the environment that we live in is a very open spirit of acceptance. But this, I think, is a time when we look at the conflicts that are happening across many regions of the world, it would be amiss of us not to take note of why it is so important for us to have a common conversation. And just today is an opportunity for us to hopefully have an open and two-way, many-way conversation about the things that make us very much united. What are the things that actually make us unite in times of stress? Guru Nanak Dev Ji, who's the founding father of the Sikh religion, born in 1469 in North India, and he is sometimes known as one of the greatest humanitarians of the last 5 centuries. And his message of Sikhism was consolidated and propagated through the journey of our 9 gurus, who then have left us with the legacy of our Guru Granth Sahib. Guru Granth Sahib is the living guru of the Sikhs and gives us the guidance and the steer on how to live a good life. Because I think ultimately, whether we are Christian, whether we are Jewish, whether we are Hindu, Sikh, or any other denomination, I think we perhaps start from the same start point. There is only one divinity. There is only one human form. We look and sound different, but it is the many colors of our garden that make it look so rich. So what we wanted to do today was really share with you a little bit about ourselves, but I think we're sitting in a place which is of course steeped in history. I would like to say a special thank you to the Diocese of Leicester, because this wonderful hall and the cathedral next door, of course, it's within the Diocese of Leicestershire. Wanted to say a special thank you to the Reverend Canon Dr. Johannes Ahrens, who has made it possible for us to have this afternoon here. And we are expecting a couple of speakers. We're going to go a little bit out of sync to the agenda that we had circulated before because our guests are running a little bit late. But of course, there is, as I was saying, there is a heritage of history. We know that this is the week where King Richard is going to be reinterred within the grounds of the cathedral next door. And I think the efforts of the whole community of Leicester and the broader area around getting a justified and much deserved place of rest for King Richard is something that many people have campaigned for. So this is also the week leading up to the birth of Guru Nanak Dev Ji. And as I said, this message of peace and brotherhood that we want to propagate is something that he very much urged Sikhs. The message of Sikh theology is about respecting the journey. The human journey and the human endeavor is about self-development, but not in isolation. To make good for yourself, but also to look after everyone around you. You will hear the words Miri Piri. So become a saint, but also be a soldier. So be counted. Soldier in the sense of never look away when there are bad things happening, and to be righteous in your behavior. So I think these are common themes with the community that has gathered today. I will not profess to say that I know a great deal about other faiths, but by opening up our book today, hopefully we will start a discourse that allows us to have even greater interaction. I'm going to hand over to a very respected member of the Sikh community. We're very, very honored to have Harinder Singh, who is a founding member of the Sikh Research Institute. And I will do him no justice by actually giving you a two-liner on this. But let me give you a little bit of a flavor of Harinder Singh, who speaks around the world. He's focused on education as a fulcrum for social change. And I think I won't be underrating Harinder by saying that when he talks about education, he's not talking about the letters education, he's talking about education in its biggest, broadest sense. And he's interdisciplinary, he's a great orator, he's worked with many multi-faith organizations. But the story that I like about Harinder best is when he founded the Sikh Research Institute, originally in Texas, the story behind that was some work that he did very quietly with the rehabilitation of some drug abuse victims. And one of those victims had a father who became a huge benefactor for the Sikh religion because he granted some land and facilities for us to set up the Sikh Research Institute. I can think of no better way of commending how, you know, the issues that confront us as a community they only have single solutions, because what works for me will work for you too, because we're all bound by that common humanity. With that, I'm going to hand over to Harinder Singh, who is going to talk to us about the period, roughly a century and a bit more, in the context of the joint message that we're trying to share today. Thank you very much for your attention. Harinder Singh.
You know, the topic, as you can see, I've entitled it Sikhs in History, so essentially trying to, well, the years are there, 550 years or so, but really I think what I want to do today is, for Sikhs and for non-Sikhs, all our guests, people who are studying Sikhs and people who are dealing with Sikhs, we're having a tough time understanding what's a DNA. Because you see all sorts of images as well, you see all sorts of behavior, and just like any other religion, we have all sorts of adherents as well. So instead of talking about sociological understanding of Sikhs, it's like if you go to Texas and look at 10 Sikhs, that's not what Sikhs are. Sikhs are what, for example, we are in this great facility, as you heard, but what is Church of England might be a question, not just few practitioners of Church of England, right? And since I'm on that topic, I do want to mention one thing, that one of my heroes, I have heroes in all religions and traditions, one of my heroes from Church of England during Henry VIII time is Sir Thomas More. So Sir Thomas More's, the idea which I relate to is that even if 90% of the population thinks you are a saint, it doesn't make you a saint if you're not answering your own conscience. You remember what Henry VIII did, which he wanted him to sign a petition, which would have accepted him as being the only sovereign, right? So really the question, so that's a DNA of Sir Thomas More. Church of England, you have St. Augustine prescribes, you know, the just war theory posthumously after the Christ had left this earth. So what is this idea of fighting in the name of religion for the just cause? So people do come up with various interpretations, and St. Augustine's interpretation is what most of the West now uses. Well, we can debate what the West has done in under three last US presidents, but I'm not going to go there. But there is a just war theory. What I want to do today is, what is a Sikh? What is their DNA? Regardless of what you might see among the Sikhs, whether they're in Leicester or in UK or whatever you might hear about us in different, and I'm not going to talk about all the Sikhs. I'm going to talk about what our doctrine is, so you can understand why we think the way we think. I want to talk about how that doctrine was brought into practice and the relevance of all that today, because the word is peace. You know, anyone will tell you, one of the dictums in Guru Granth Sahib, which is where our manifesto is, it says you cannot have a peace unless there's a peace within. And the reason you have evil, if you want to use that word, which in Sikh terms is actually perversion of mind. When you don't have a peace within, the perversions come out in their outer manifestations. And this is what you see world around, whether it's what's happening in ISIL, or whether the way certain cultures and communities treat women, or whether the wrong debate on immigrations in America or even the Western Europe now. So why is it that the Sikhs think the way they think? That's the question I want to answer today. So let's get into that very quickly. And the very first thing I put out there, this was a guy, first man who was at Harvard. He came to study at Harvard about 100 years ago, and he did MA in education. And in one of his first essays, this is what he wrote. This might be a departure for most of you to understand Sikhs. Even most Sikhs might not even agree with it, but this is the doctrine. We are not looking for heaven. We are not even looking for salvation, because those are two end goals. And what he ends up describing is that the aim, according to the Sikh gurus, the founders of the faith, is to develop the best in us, which is God. So this is a process. So this is really more about the journey rather than the end goal for us. This is why you will see when I describe some of these instances in history that really it doesn't matter whether we win or lose in the metrics, as we call them in business world these days. We're not trying to meet any metric. We are just being. You know, other day I was joking, as much as I like Shakespeare, we don't have that dilemma to be or not to be. Our dictum actually became just to be. And just to be explains this, that I'm trying to bring out this idea of what the Western world or the Semitic traditions now call God. That's not the word we use, but that's the most common word, so we'll stick to it for this explanation. So what is it that we believe in? And that's the first element I want to talk about. Now, this is the opening of the Sikh scripture, and by the way, it's the scripture which has contributions from the multi-religious environment. So world has not even envisioned this stuff. This is, to call it even a scripture is actually reducing it, because we call it Guru. And Guru actually is not just an expert for Sikhs. Guru is not just somebody who is a prophet even. We look at Guru as being perfection personified on this earth. And this includes the ideas of the Muslims and the Hindus at the time in the South Asian traditions. So what this means is, in a wider context, it includes the pluralistic vision of both Semitic traditions represented by Islam at the time in South Asia, as well as the Aryan traditions represented by Hindus and the other tribal religions of the South Asian continent. This is the declaration. The declaration by Guru Nanak is, this is what I believe in. And if you look at the vocabulary, you might even have a tough time classifying this as religious. And it probably is okay to say that, because we are not religion in the classical sense of the word. Because which religious personality says that fearless now is being used as an approach, but how do you become fearless in your attitude, in your behavior? This is also saying this idea of Ikko-Onkar, which is this symbol. Ikko-Onkar is not just God. In fact, Ikko-Onkar, the word I use is one force. You know, I'm a Star Wars fan too, so because force is invisible. Force is invisible. We really believe there are 7.2 billion people on the earth, right now. We really believe this means that every single person on this earth has this force. The question is, do you want to be the Jedi warrior? And if you want to, then you'll invoke it. But remember what Darth Vader was? He was a good guy too. But at some point, he's not invoking the Force in the right way, so he becomes a dark force. So we believe every single person on this earth, regardless of your color of skin, to your beliefs, whether even if Richard Dawkins is your God, even then you have this capacity. So we are not into the isms. We are not really into the labels. We are into, can you exercise this force? And the way you exercise is you make your behavior to be these things. And your behavior, when it becomes this is how you become, if you want to borrow the Western idea, then this is how you become God-like. Or I like to say this is how you become Force-like. And how do you become Force-like? Guru Nanak is saying every single individual on this earth is a product of divine gift. And the gift is given to you. Now what are you going to do with the gift? This is where our system started, in a sense, that how do we perceive evil? So for us, evil is not a person. Devil is not a person. It's a perversion of mind. People who don't use the force properly. They use it for negative energies. So the fight is not personal, but the fight becomes a policy fight. And this is where the history started. This is one of the famous historians who wrote a 7-volume study of the Sikhs, a Hindu gentleman named Harinder Gupta. And it's very instructive what he captured. He actually sat in a library in Punjab, a personal library of a woman who started educational systems 100 years ago. And you know, even South Asia, how things are right now, with all the focus of Nobel Peace Prize winners even. What is happening with Malala and then Satyarthi when they're being given prizes, that how the focus is still not on women and how many things are going on. 100 years ago, this woman died at the age of 24. She established the best library in Punjab. Sitting in that library, Harinder Gupta is writing this 7-volume history, and it's very instructive. I just want to bring your focus. And he basically says, what is the story of the Sikhs? It is a people's movement based on democracy, secularism, and socialism without any barrier of caste, color, or country. Now, most Sikhs might not even like this statement, but this is true, because most Sikhs also don't know what Sikh DNA is these days. It's a troublesome thing. It's just like most Muslims might not know this. Most Christians might not know this. As Diana Ack from Harvard says, you know, religion these days is consumeristic religion. You know, people are just shopping for religion, whatever works for now, and they move on. People are not really sticking to doctrine. This is the doctrine of Sikh faith. It's a people's movement. So individualism, which is very anti-American in that sense, and I'm from there, and anti-Texas, we don't have rugged individualism. We celebrate people's history. The first book written by Sikhs on Sikhs is actually titled that too. It's called Sri Guru Panth Prakash, The History of the Sikh People. So we don't get into individualism. Whenever we do end up there, we end up creating troubles. And you'll see this in UK or in Punjab or other places as well. So it's a people's movement. This is like, you know, vainglorious kind of an idea. And the world hadn't seen this 500 years ago. This is why it seems so foreign. This is why when Sikhs are trying to explain who they are, most people don't get it. Because the paradigm is very different. And what is that paradigm? Let's get into it. And I put this is one of my favorite authors, Sardar Jagjit Singh, and he captures what was the reason for existence for the Sikhs. Right? That's the question. Why do you exist? You can't say, I exist so I can pray. That's your personal thing. But why do you exist in society? What is the contribution? What are your social or economic or political goals? So I pray, like Mother Teresa used to say, I pray so the Hitler in me doesn't come out. Yeah. And she fixed her systems to figure out how to create sisters of charity to work on particular element of life, right? Here is a Sikh goal from that angle. And if you look at it, it sounds very, very revolutionary. This is why Sikhs are not just a religion. We are probably, if you want to study us, we are sort of a revolution and a religion combined. It's a symbiotic relationship between the two. The one does not exist, the other for us. And that's the real Guru Nanak. And here it says, the very first goal for us is creating an egalitarian society, which, you know, simply put is people will have opportunity in whatever their politics, whatever their persuasion, they have equal, you know, what the world is talking about today. Even in the Western world, we are still talking about in America, how come women don't have the equal pays? Because there is this greed. We don't treat people equally. We look at their gender, we look at their skin, and things of that nature. And this is the purpose for the Sikhs. They're like, they came in this earth. Our reason to exist is to create this egalitarian society. Now, if you're going to create an egalitarian society, you're going to invite number of attacks. And you know the fiefdoms in Europe were like, some of that stuff is still around, and anyone who challenged that, of course, they invited attacks. Whenever you're challenging religious and political power, which is the second goal written, and religious power included, you are not going to be liked. Because Guru Nanak believed the most destructive people were those two, religious authorities and political authorities. Because they were, instead of empowering people, they were actually looting them. And he confronted both of them vehemently to the level where he was jailed. And the third thing is, capturing power was the mission, but for a commoner. The word he used was a plebeian mission, which essentially implies for an average person. Now, if this is the goal set out, and this is articulated in Guru Granth Sahib, the whole history of the Sikhs can be understood if you understand these three purposes. Their reason to exist. That's the Latin, I don't know how to pronounce, some say it's French, but whatever it is. I didn't go to Oxford and I didn't take Latin. But the point is, the reason to exist is this. If this is a reason to exist, this is Guru Granth Sahib now. Now this is Guru Nanak speaking, the founder of the faith. He says, I came to this earth to identify with the disenfranchised communities. And he did not just declare this. We have evidence, recorded evidence available from 1469 for almost 70 years of his life as to how he practiced this. Now, if you say disenfranchised, you know what that means in today's term, lowliest of the low, some people say. This is where they are the unrepresented or underrepresented causes, peoples, and nations. Just to put in today's perspective, that is 40% of untouchables in India today, for example. Just to put in perspective, UN is running a campaign in today's numbers, 50 million missing women. These are some serious numbers. That's a more population than most of the European nations. And that many have been killed. So the relevance of this is, imagine back then, when it was a curse, including in Guru Nanak's own family, they used to kill their daughters. He's like, this is absurd. They don't see the divinity. And this is still absurd, and according to Human Rights Watch and Amnesty and other reports, you can see that India and China are the two biggest killers even now. So he takes this on because he says, I am not to compete with the establishment. Establishment will be whatever the status quo is. He's like, no, I know what the law is. I know what the society is saying, but I don't subscribe to it because in the name of whatever religion or political ideology, I'm not accepting what you're doing. And this is what he practiced. He wrote, so our scripture reads this. Can you imagine actually praying this every day? That I identify with the downtrodden and I'm not going to work with the establishment. Right there is a huge political leftist statement in today's terminology. Right? You will probably think they are some, like a Occupy Wall Street kind of people. Right? But that's not, we bow to this. So this is not just even a political manifesto, this becomes a religiosity. So just like, we talk about what Sikhs have become, people don't understand it, we don't understand it because the world hasn't seen this model. How can a spiritual personality talk this politically? And that's what he did. So he gave a vision for the world. And his vision is, as recorded in Guru Granth Sahib, this is actually from Bhagat Ravidas. I mentioned there were several people included in Guru Granth Sahib. And Bhagat Ravidas is from a disenfranchised community. Sikhs ideologically have given equal status. Practically, we still are struggling. But ideologically, we did. Guru had no struggle. He says, you're right there with me. You are, to use the Marxist terminology, you are my comrade, he called it. He didn't use the word comrade, but I'm using that. He's like, you are equal to me because I subscribe to this vision. The way to establish a city without sorrow, this sounds like a political manifesto again, or this might be, what America has, Bill of Rights, or when you have your Magna Carta, or when Rousseau is putting out his stuff. This is that kind of stuff in a religious scripture. And he's saying, I'll just put one line to this, where he says, the only way to have stability anywhere is to assure there are no second or third class citizens. Now that's his criteria. You want stability? Whether at home, whether in your organization, whether in Leicester, whether in UK or in the global populations, the only way to assure that stability is in the relationships, in communities, in nations, is to make sure there are no second or third class citizens. And part of that vision is you can see that, most of the world is about economic and political rights. And this is what this is saying, that you got to work on economic and political. Taxation has to be fair. Isn't that where the fights are? What should be the tax code everywhere? In America, that's the biggest fight. That's why one can never figure out what to do. So rich people hire the richest lawyers to figure out how to bypass all of them. Corporations pay none, right? It is still the fight. This was the fight back then because a Mughal dynasty had laid a particular tax on non-Mughals, and Guru Nanak is fighting that. And he's writing that in his scripture. He says, this is my religion, that I will not pay this unfair tax. The city where he has a religious experience, I have had a chance to take students there, I visit there. There was a watchtower on the bank of the river where they used to collect the tax. And Sikhs sing that every day. Some of them don't realize what they're singing. It's basically saying, this kar, which is a tax, I refuse to pay because it's unfair. How dare you charge me a tax because my religion is different. So this is late 1400s, this is going on. Obviously, the religious and political leaders are very upset. And when they are upset, you're going to invite their wrath. That's how it used to work. You know how it is. Europe went through its own things of these in the 1400s and 1500s and continues even now in some places. But I want you to have a quick glance at this. We have had 10 founders of the faith. And all I'm trying to show here is the Mughals existed at the same, they're the contemporaries of the gurus. Every guru had confrontation with the Mughal emperor. Every single one. Now let me capture that in a very statistical way. There are 10 gurus and there are 9 Mughals covering the largest dynasty India had ever seen. And every single one, either through dialogue or in 2 cases they were imprisoned. Mughals imprisoned the founders of the first guru was imprisoned. The 5th guru was tortured to death. The 6th guru was imprisoned. You know how you have prisoners of political conscience? And amnesty, I remember in my high school in Kansas City writing letters. That's how I started out in these things. Diwali is coming. You'll probably hear about light, festival of lights. Sikhs also celebrate that. But our reason to celebrate is when Guru Hargobind, the 6th Nanak we call him, when he was eventually being released, he said, this is not good enough. I want every single political prisoner in the Gwalior fort to be released. Now, which spiritual leader does this? That's why they're not just spiritual leaders. They're spiritual and political at the same time. And he made sure it happened. And when all 52, we will say, dissenting kings at the time were released from the prison, when Guru Hargobind came to Amritsar, the center of the Sikhs, that's what we call Diwali or Bandi Chhod Divas. Actually, the literal meaning for us is Emancipation Day. I encourage all Sikhs to start saying that, or Freedom Day. It'll give you some things to think about. This will be about, in America has the largest incarceration in the world right now, right? So Sikhs' work really is to figure out how to get rid of the industrial complex of prisons in America, because that's what Guru Hargobind taught us. So this is our history. If 239 years of the gurus are being spent here, this is what makes life peaceful. So peace, or another way to put it, peace is not something which happens just by musically singing, although you take all gurus take musical inspirations. They drew their strength from the lyrics, the music, the sound, but scripture is very clear. The one who listens to these kind of sounds, there's a criteria defined in Japji, those 6 who are sitting here. It says, Suneya poh na sakya kal. Those who listen to this, they figure out how to confront death, which means get rid of your fear. When you confront your fear, you're able to work on the policies which bring real peace. And the real peace is you got to work with, Chomsky today talks about how America is becoming the new imperialism, right? And he's absolutely right about certain things. That's my politics as well. Well, gurus were taking on the imperialistic forces of the time. They're like, I draw my personal strength from divinity, and the exercise of the divinity is I am taking on what the imperialistic forces are doing in the world and how they're violating average individual. How they're violating and he describes, he says, Where have the beautiful sports gone? Where have the singing women have gone? Why are they being raped and killed and plundered and looted? Because he witnessed a genocide himself. And he spoke against it. He was imprisoned for speaking against it by the first Mughal emperor named Babur. So this is the history of the Sikhs. We listen to music we call kirtan, divine music, because it's supposed, it invokes in us this ideas of how do you become relevant to the issues of 7.2 billion people today. So if this is our history, if these are the founders, and I just want to highlight a couple of other things and move on, you know, you can read there, but this whole idea of langar, which Sikhs talk about food, like, you know, we are sitting here in Church of England, they're very big on poverty right now. They have been big on this country about poverty. When Guru Nanak saw that, just to cite a parallel, this is great, because what is world's problem? World's number one problem is poverty or hunger. Then there is probably geopolitical stuff. Guru Nanak confronted that too. His solution was he invested in today's dollars, 300,000 US dollars to take on hunger in 1470s. So he says, his dad gave him that amount of money. He says, go start a business, because he was a middle class, you know, family. He says, you know, this is the business I want to invest in. I want to get rid of hunger. So hunger is a serious issue. This is the tradition we had. Now we have to figure out how to take on the hunger issues in the country and the world, not just in the Sikh Gurdwaras. And that's something I challenge some of the Sikhs to do, and some of them are doing it as well. Just to give another example, and then we'll move on. You know where Kabul is, right? Afghanistan, you see images of that right now on TV. When Guru Amar Das, the third Nanak, he established his administrative units. South Asia at the time was divided into 22 administrative units. One of the administrative unit was headquartered in Kabul. This is what he did. This is how he executed his ideas into policies. He says, my representative in Kabul will be a woman. Imagine how they treat her today. He's like, you want to talk to me? My ambassador, my emissary is this woman. Imagine the ruckus it must have caused. It causes ruckus today. Imagine the kind of brutality it would have invoked in people. So he meant it, and he put his action, he made it happen. It wasn't just a philosophy. So this is the training of Sikhs for 239 years. In this training, then what comes out is this. You can read up here a couple of quotes, but basically what this is saying is that the state eventually perceived this as a threat. That Sikhs are working, the gurus, the founders, the religious leaders are working to empower the everyday person. And this is too dangerous, because then who will be the ruler? So this is like Bastille, except successful. After the bloodshed, something happened in India, because 6 gurus were killed. They were martyred. 6 out of the 10 gurus have spent time in jail. They were tortured to death. There were assassination attempts, and 2 of them were actually killed. Which spiritual leader has gone through that? This is our history. So I want you to understand our DNA. This is our DNA. Our spirituality is so active that the state did not even spare the founders of the faith, because they were what we will call today movers and shakers. They were not just doing a PR, they were actually changing the policies. Policies which they thought were unjust and did not respect and did not deal in a dignified way with everyday people. That's the work. So in that work comes this center. All of you probably are aware of it. Popularly, it's Golden Temple. Well, this became not a place of worship. This became a place of deliberations for Sikhs. Now, I want to focus on that for a couple of reasons, because most Western dignitaries go there, take a picture, print it in the local press, saying that how I love the Sikhs. Don't mind me saying this, because I've seen this in US, Canada, UK, everywhere, which is great. But I want you to know a little bit more about this place, what happens here. This is not a sacred space. We don't have a concept of sacred space, because we believe every place is divine. We don't have a concept of sacred space. This is a historically significant place, because we believed before America had Bill of Rights or the First Amendment, like right to assemble freely, this is where Sikhs went to deliberate what should we do. And every government, Mughals, British, Indians, you name it, doesn't matter which nationality, they all have tried to make sure there should be no deliberation done here, because whenever Sikhs have gone there to deliberate, they come out empowered and they go deliver. So the question became, ban it. It happened in 18th century multiple times. It happened in 20th century in the last 30 years as well. So you have to understand the DNA, because we are about people's deliberations, right? So this is where, this is sort of like akin to the American Revolution idea, because we believe government does not exist like the French did. That government doesn't exist to guarantee the right of man here. It was sort of like what Tocqueville wrote when he said, he observed this about America. He said, and I believe this is sort of like America is sort of like Sikhs in idea at least, which is God has already guaranteed the rights. Government just exists to safeguard them. Which means no government can decide whether I'm equal or not, whether I deserve equal play or not, whether even America now, whether women have the right to fight in infantry or not. That is already given. This is a birthright. Government's job is to become the liberal institution, which is to safeguard the rights. And we really believe that's what our dictum is, and that's what we have practiced. So this center is open to all. Everyone goes there. Just to give you an idea, and you guys know this from UK, a lot of people go. The Queen has been there, everyone goes there, and the governments of the time tell everyone not to go. You don't know these people. You know the spookiness. You know these people might do funny things. No funny thing has happened to anyone. You go there, even after so many successive attempts of making sure with the negative propaganda. Every year I go, sometimes even 3 times a year. I don't have a time to. The most busy place in India right now is the Darbar Sahib complex. And 70 to 80% of the people who go there are non-Sikhs. That should tell you something about the place, that this is so open and inviting. But the more important thing, which is not being talked about, this is where we deliberated. And we will continue to deliberate there. And this is why successive governments, the imperialistic powers, they have all tried to destroy it, because they want us to make this a player of worship. We don't have that concept. And they're converting into a player of worship now. We used to pray and sing as an original inspiration, and right after the singing and praying, we used to deliberate. That now we have clarified our mind, we need to think on behalf of people on this earth without discrimination. Now let's talk about tax policy, let's talk about state policy. So music is invoked for inspiration, not an end in itself. And this is the place where we did it. So there have been successive Sikh kingdoms as well. This is the first one in the post-Guru period. But I want you to look at how kingdoms are setting up and what they are doing. This is Banda Singh Bahadur, Khalsa Raj, you can read it, but I want you to just look at this. Guaranteeing religious, the world is still waiting for multicultural models, the world is waiting for right pluralistic models. You know the experiments which have failed in even France, and what is happening in America. If you look at the news, even in India, how it says it is the most tolerant and multicultural society, look at what is happening to ethnic, religious, and gender minorities. This is something Banda Singh Bahadur actually practiced and made it a reality. I'll continue to another one. And because he made it a reality, right after that, every single invader who invaded India went to this complex and just in 18th century 6 times demolished it. Because he says, these guys, man, we got to kill their inspiration. Why do they fight on people's behalf? Sikhs don't fight, whatever we might be our current understanding, the history is, even in 18th century, they fought on people of India's behalf. And just to put it in, words matter. If you want to be technical about it, sometimes we shy away from realities. The technical thing is, if you want to go by today's environment and boundaries, Guru Nanak was actually born in Pakistan. But how many Sikhs would say that? Because Pakistan's got a particular image now, right? So we have to actually intentionally say that now. Yeah, he was born in that area. Yeah, we had emissary in Kabul. Because you know what we are looking at in ISIL and ISIS and Syria? That same ideology in 18th century was operating in India, and the only people who resisted that, and they paid with their lives and paid with the desecration of their complex of deliberation, were the Sikhs. And this is not Sikhs saying, you read any 18th century historian, they'll tell you the same thing. The only people who resisted the invaders and the radical, the brutal violence, the raping and the plunder and everything you're looking at right now, it was exactly operating through the invaders with the similar ideologies and successfully challenged by Sikhs. So this is the Sikh theologian, and this is what I want all of you to understand. We are not seeking any concessions from any governments. We believe it is a right to practice that deliberation there. Patwan Singh is a famous figure. He wrote a book on Golden Temple, and he's no militant. This is his opening quote. He said, "The blood and sweat of several generations built it, defended it, and rebuilt it." So you have to understand, as a control and command center, when somebody wants to destroy you, they want to destroy where you seek your inspirations from. And then there are lots of things about it. That's coming on. And you guys know about, then there was a Sikh kingdom. Nobody even talks about it. These days we have conversations about why are Sikhs talking about, because there is a section of Sikh community which talks about their own state. I'm giving you some pretext to it, so you at least understand what is going on. Because there was a Sikh state. I mean, it was one of the most successful states India had ever seen. This state had treaties with 4 other countries. 5 countries it had diplomatic relations with. It had figured out how to have Americans, French, a guy from Philadelphia served there. Their finance minister was a Muslim man. The Hindus and Muslims shared the power in this monarchical system. And this was one of the last, well, the last state or kingdom to get annexed by the British in 1849. But this existed, where Sikhs experimented with the ideas which the Gurus provided. There was no capital punishment. So why is this model not being talked about anymore? Where actually Sikhs implemented, we don't have to have Sikhs who are in control of everything. World today is talking about no capital punishment. He made sure there was no capital punishment until he was alive. And he died in 1839. Guess what happened? As soon as the strong leader dies, they started the havoc there. Between 1839 and 1849, everything got demolished. So my point here is that inclusivity, the ideas we are looking at today, what does diversity mean, what is not just tolerance. People use the idea that we should be tolerant of each other. In America, I say that's so 1960s. The word is acceptance. I don't care if you like me or not, but are you willing to accept me the way I am? That's what Gurus taught. It's what Thomas Jefferson said. I like him as a president. One of my heroes in America is him. He says, whether my neighbor worships 1 God, 3 God, or no God, I don't care. That's his choice. And that's what Gurus were teaching 500 years ago. And they implemented those ideas. And Sikhs who understood that, even in their own discomforts, they implemented it to some level. Now let's talk at the British level a little bit. People say we are violent. I say we are trying to establish peace. And here is some statistic. Nobody says when Sikhs were fighting the British to free India, look at the statistic. Less than 2% of our population is Sikh. And you can see who is dying for it, to free India. Or now what we call India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan, South Asia. 2% population. So peace has its cost. The cost of peace is you got to have peace within, which strengthens you to even give up your life to establish real peace. And this is freedom. This is Sikhs. Look at the statistics. This is crazy. So obviously the world doesn't understand us. That's why they call us crazies. Now some of us are really crazy, but that's a separate issue. We'll refer them to psychiatrists. But in terms of political ideology, in terms of what a DNA is, what I was calling, this is where it's coming from. It's coming from the Gurus directly. It's coming from the inspiration of divinity that our job on this earth is to establish egalitarian societies. Now, India happened, and let me touch that because this is the 30th anniversary of 84 as well. I just want to give you some pretext, some color behind it. The 84 didn't just happen. Between 1947 and 84, you can see some of the things there. There is a period of civil disobedience. In America, they're called Jim Crow laws, which basically means targeting particular community for particular discriminatory practice. Sikhs spoke against that too, because remember, we don't really care who the masters are. Our job is to make sure they continue to talk about the issues. Civil disobedience, can you imagine? Just look at this number. I think it's 400 or 500,000, where did it go? And sometime in 1960s, there is Sikhs are slave. Look at this, August 60, Sikhs are already observing a slavery day. Now, I don't want to get too much into it, but the point is, there came a point in 60s where 400,000 Sikhs were arrested in Delhi alone. So don't say we are violent. No, we are not. We have figured out what Gandhi was envisioning, but he never was able to fulfill, a massive civil disobedience. Although I don't want to get into that point, but the point is, we actually tried all those things. State became violent, and then the state becomes violent. Sikh history is, we're not going to sit still. We are not Gandhinian. We are not pacifists. We believe it is our role. Just like Augustine created a just war theory, our gurus created a just war theory. And the guru's theory of the 10th king, we call him the Guru Gobind Singh, he said when you have exhausted all other means, then it is time to fight force with force. And we did. Look at exhausting all these means. And this is where November 84, June 84, the carnage, the pogrom, and you guys have been hearing about it. I have a letter. I went to somebody's house from an MP in UK writing to a Sikh leader at the time and saying, I'm so ashamed that my government actually provided information and helped the Indian government for this attack. Now I want to cite someone else who is not a controversial figure, just in case you're thinking this is propaganda, but Amnesty people are sitting, it's not propaganda, even they wrote reports on this stuff. But John Paul II, I want to invoke him for a second, the only world leader, because he did not have economic interests in India, that's the reason. Otherwise, every economy trumps human rights, you know that. That's the case with China for so many years now. It's happening with every country. The only world leader in June 1984 who's on record writing to the Prime Minister of India saying, what the hell have you done? He didn't use the word hell, I'm interpreting. He basically said, what have you done? This is unacceptable. John Paul II. You have no idea what you have done. Thatcher wrote a private letter, but the only public letter which was written was by John Paul II. Now my point is, he wrote it because he does not have economic interests in India. Everyone else is looking at the rising middle class and how not to upset the corporations. Okay, let's move on a bit. When people say Sikhs were fighting about religious rights, yeah, maybe 5% of that is true, but mostly look at the issues. They're riparian or water issues, linguistic issues, state economies, and when India was becoming dictator, emergency was being declared, they were fighting and taking them on. Why am I sharing all this? This is mostly in India because, let me share one more thing. This is the guy who planned the June 1984 attack. Now this is very important. This is coming from the horse's mouth. So you hear probably quite a few things about A4. Let me just set one record straight. His name is Lieutenant General or Lieutenant General S.K. Sinha. He's one of the few generals, just to put a little bit about his character, one of the very few who has actually commanded a UN peacekeeping force in the world. He was asked 16 to 18 months in advance to prepare the demolition of Darbar Sahib complex or Golden Temple, what we call popularly. This is what he's writing. He says, I was given these orders. I have taken an oath to not destroy my own citizens but fight the enemies. He says, people who defended that, he says, I salute them. He says, if they wouldn't have defended, who would have? And he refused to carry out the operation. He's like, this is not my job. He was not fired. A lot of them were fired because this guy had status. He had standing. He's not Punjabi. He's not Sikh. He's still alive. I have interviewed him a few times. He's from Bihar. Currently, he lives in Delhi. And look at the time of the record. He said that within 2-3 weeks. 84 itself. Now this speaks to the men who defended it. That's not the topic today, but look at his statement. Just look at it. In view of these military preparation, if Sant Pindrawan and his men descended to defend the Golden Temple with all their might and means, no one can and should blame them. You are bound to do all you when you know someone is going to raid your house. In this case, the house was the holiest Sikh shrine in the world. This is from the guy who planned the operation. So you know how when there's a battle, you're quoting the other generals? That's what I'm doing on the recent history. So, one of the rap groups I listen to, I'm a little bit weird in that way. Public Enemy remains one of my sort of upbringing in Kansas, I guess. They have a song called Fight the Power. They have a song called Fight for Your Right to Fight. I identify with those because these similar things is what Che Guevara's of the world were saying, what Nelson Mandela was saying similar things. Right now, we don't look at those things. What was his fight? I went to Robben Island, and I went to his cell, sitting there outside Cape Town, and looking at his cell, which is smaller than where the dogs of the white men were kept. And what was his criteria? He says, when you allow one man, one vote, I'll stop what I do. Until then, I will not stop. These are all pains of the world. These are the pains, some of the pains of the Sikh and Punjabi communities. And I'm just going to skip over this. Let me just quickly come to this. Now, well, actually, let me not skip over this. Joyce Pettigrew lives in Scotland now. She used to be at the University of Belfast. Just on 84 quickly, her statement is very clear. She's an anthropologist. Yeah? She's saying what happened in 84 was not about few men. It wasn't about few people at Complex. It was about killing the psyche and the spirit of the Sikh nation. Now, this is exactly what the Mughals did as well. They used to go desecrate for the same reasons. I'm not going to get into the details of that, but I want you to know that independents who study us, this is what they have to say. Now, in the world phenomena, coming back to who Sikhs are. Now, we are, in the history of world religions, we are the new kids on the block, not the old group if you're from the 80s or 90s. Yeah? So, if you are the new kids on the block, now what I've done here is on the bottom is what the world is going through. Look what Sikhs are going through. We had our first genocide in 1740s, a second one in 1760s. Just to put statistics around it, 75% of Sikh population was killed. This is the date. Well, it's not here, in 1746. 75% of Sikh population, the invaders were killing because we were removing the sex slavery, we were stopping it then. They were looting the Hindu women in India and we were stopping them. In 1762, 50% of Sikh population was killed. So we went through this a long time ago and we have figured out this is going to happen, right? So if this is going to happen, why does it happen is what I'm trying to help you understand is, if this is going to happen, look what world is going through. 84, it happened again. And my thing is, this happens to us because this happened to our founders. What were our founders doing? Our founders were challenging what we now call hegemonic cultures or hegemonic powers. That's our DNA. Yes, we are poets. All gurus wrote beautiful poetry. I actually say they have poetic impulses with lyrical silence and string instruments attached to it, with incredible percussion. They were all musicians. They were all composers. Imagine that now. But they were all great with the sword as well. In fact, one of them was named Guru Tegh Bahadur, the one who was great with sword. So world doesn't get it. How can a musician, a spiritualist, be fighting for the right taxation? It's hard to understand. It's a very different paradigm. Because usually there are political thinkers who do it. It's like a Voltaire. When the Enlightenment was happening in Europe, when Voltaire was in jail, that's his most famous statement, where he said, "In dissent, I will think about defending you." That's what he had said, right? When he was a political prisoner. At the same time as Guru Tegh Bahadur, when Hindus are being violated in India by the Mughals, and certain fanatical elements of the Mughals, we'll call it, Guru Tegh Bahadur says, "Even in dissent, I will die protecting you," and he did. So there is a very different paradigm. This is not something easy to grasp. I know it. It has taken me a long time to figure out how do I tell my story, how do I tell my people's story without compromising what they have done. So they are musicians, they are city planners. The largest city you probably know in Amritsar is Amritsar by now, or in Punjab, built by Sikh gurus. It became a market center. They're designing cities, they're taking on the state, they're creating a multicultural model where the scripture includes Hindus and Muslims, including butchers. Can you imagine that? Yes, a butcher's compositions are included in Guru Granth Sahib. I'm sharing all this because the world hasn't seen a constitution or manifesto like this. And every power, which primarily is religious and political, they are shaken. They're like, what is this? What are they doing? This is what's called disruption today. You know how the IT world calls disruption? They disrupted the system. They disrupted it so badly that they had to pay with their lives, their families, their sons. In some cases, their grandsons were also eliminated. Yes, that's what happened, and that's the cost. I compare this to American revolutionaries from only example angle. The 37 people who fought the American Revolutionary War, I don't think most people know about them because their women were raped, their houses were burned, and they were killed. Nobody knows. We only know the Washington general who fought one of the battles subsequently. Anyway, this is the history of the Sikh DNA. Now, how is this relative to today? Let me come to today for last 2 minutes, and then I'll take some questions. This is Freedom Index of the press. I'm not talking about other freedoms. because you know how when journalists are killed, we get worked up, and we should. But this is the map today of freedom of just journalism. And you know in today's age what is going on. And I want you to look at the map and see what the world is facing, which means not your right to talk freely, but somebody who is professional, his or her right to talk freely. Even today, it's not being allowed in 2/3 of the world. And this is not my grading, this is Reporters Without Borders. Now, how do you expect? Look at the color here. Look at the colors in most places, right? How do you expect that somebody will tell a Sikh story properly? That's my point. You can't. This is our work. Our work is we have to find people, and people have to tell their story. If I want to learn about Christianity, I want to ask a practicing Christian. His version will be very different. So similarly, I'm asking, if you want to learn about Sikhs, you don't ask even a practicing Sikh, is what I'm saying. I'm saying you go back to our doctrine, because practicing Sikhs are like me. We all have our own idiosyncrasies. But our DNA, our doctrine is very, very clear. And by the way, the great news for all Sikhs is there are 30 million of us in the world, and we only have one agreement, and that agreement is our manifesto is perfect. Everything else we fight about. So we all believe in Guru Granth Sahib. We are having trouble interpreting that manifesto for UK or for Leicester or where I live in New Jersey now, or wherever people might be, or in Punjab, or if they're in Kenya. We are having tough time because how do we tell our story? Because we don't know how to present this paradigm. And the paradigm is simply this, and I end with this. This is a writer, Sikh writer, traveled the world 100 years ago, banned in India until 1960s, first published in England, that's why I'm sharing this. England actually allowed his writings to be published in 1910s and 1920s. And he wrote a book called Spirit of the Sikh, and there he writes this. He talks about the politics of the gurus. And look at his words. And by the way, he's a poet and a scientist. Most of his books are about poetry. Like, just to give you a title, again, he's carrying the spirit of the Sikhs. The titles of his books are like Sisters of the Spinning Wheel, or Afternoon with the Self, or Song of Myself, things of that, like Walt Whitman style. He is writing this. He says, the politics of the guru is what? Fighting against all social injustice, all tyranny, all wrong taxation of the poor, all subjugation of man to man were his politics. So our religiosity is this. And today, we might be failing at this. I ask all of you, both Sikhs and non-Sikhs here, at least understand where we are coming from. We might not have the vocabulary sometimes to explain it, but I'm asking you to become a little bit sensitive to this is not easy to grasp. I fully get it. Not everyone gets every personality in the world. But these are the personalities we bow to. These are the personalities we call them our coaches. These are the personalities, people understand about samurais because there have been illustrations in the world about them. Sikh interpretation, the Sikh heart is still pregnant. It hasn't come out yet. It is waiting to come out, and I'm sure it will come out in UK because second, third generation is looking at these things. How do you create your depiction, your narrative, right? How do you beautifully present idea which seems contradictory to the world, but it has become a symbiotic relationship for the Sikhs, which is spirituality and politics for us is together. It is inseparable. It has never been separated in our history, and I'm sure today it cannot be separated, although some people are trying it. So with that, I leave you with the last thought. This is part of our prayer in Guru Granth Sahib, and look at what it says. He says, the graceful has ordained there should be no harassment of anyone. Can you believe these scriptural words talking about harassments? And it says, all reside in peace, such is the benevolent rule dominion. So it is not saying that I want to become a prime minister of this country, or a president of that country, or a chief minister of a particular province. It's saying, wherever I'm living, I'll be satisfied if there is no harassment. If there is harassment, I'm going to become a troublemaker, to put it bluntly. So no one should be harassed. And this is why Sikhs actually take on their own Sikh leaders too, because that's in our DNA. Because if our religious leader is corrupt, we like hell with him too. If our political leader is corrupt, we say hell with him too. This is where our scripture is. So this idea of love in Sikhi, the idea of justice in Sikhi, is all born out of the music we listen to, the prayers we do, but the byproduct of all that is that we basically are looking for what in today's world is called where there are protections of people's rights. There has to be liberal institutions to protect it. Now, hopefully, this gave you a few things to think about. Yeah? Maybe a lot of things to think about. Now, my job was one. I was asked to talk about Sikhi, and I'm like, how do I talk about it without talking about what we are made of? What is our metal? Are we able to deliver this wherever we live, in whichever diaspora, including in UK? Of course not. We are like any other community. People are at different levels of observations. But at least you should know where we are coming from. So if we are challenging certain powers to be, because this is part of our religiosity. If we are singing in a particular way, our music is invoking those emotions. Our music is not just to feel good. We feel so good that sometimes people who are musicians, I'll mention this because music is very important in Sikhi and it's not being utilized properly. 100 years ago, our best musicians, the Ragis, Jwala Singh is the name if anyone knows, they used to sit in the protests and sing there, and they used to get arrested. So even our, like the rectors of Sikh world or the composers of the Sikh world, they're sitting in protests and singing. Like our Wagners are singing there. Yeah? So that's what we are. Hopefully I've given you a few things to think about. What is our makeup? And I invite, if the forum allows, any questions on, or comments or criticisms, whatever works. But I know I made it more political oriented, and that was intentional. Because I think most people know about the spirituality of the Sikhs. And according to Sikh gurus themselves, spirituality causes no trouble anywhere. But when you use that spirituality to change policies which are economic and political, this is where the stresses come in. So that's what I focus was on. How do you take on the policies? How do you invoke your personal religiosity? Don't tell religiosity to others. Use your religiosity to confront and establish more just society.
I sometimes get asked the question, are Sikhs evangelical? And I always say no, but I think you're going to give a better answer than I could.
Well, it might be different, I don't know better, because all answers are, the answers are product of what we know. We don't have that tradition now. In fact, if anything, we have a tradition which was countering that. There are incidents available to us where Sikhs came in the court of the gurus and said, make me a Sikh. He said, why don't you go think about it? Is this really for you? Guru Arjan did that. So no, we don't have, but how did people become Sikhs? Those who choose to. We had sons and daughters of the gurus, like they're basically offsprings who chose not to. There are others who chose to. It is actually that, which again is very different. We don't assume that because one is born in our family will be Sikh, because some of the founders' kids themselves weren't. So it's a willful choice, individual. It's like, how do you pick a political ideology? Are you born with it? You probably study it. Is Nietzsche for you? You have to read him to see if it is for you. So something similar is in Sikhi. It is, is our music, is our ideology, is our practice for you? If it is, embrace it. If it's not, great. Embrace what you want to embrace.
I think one of the I'll speak up a bit. I think one of the parts of our scripture talks about be a good person. Live your life as a good person. So if you're a Hindu, be a good Hindu. If you're a Muslim, be a good Muslim. If you're a Christian, be a good Christian. If you're a Sikh, be a good Sikh. But then to be a good Sikh, you need to understand what is a Sikh. So I agree with you that the way that we've just talked about the Sikh religion today has been to share a little bit more about the spirit of the soldier and where that comes from. And the soldier isn't just for the Sikh faith, it is about human rights. And I just wanted to kind of share a little bit with the audience while you're thinking of your questions. Please put up your hand if you want to ask a question or make an observation or perhaps share something. Yes, please. Thank you.
Various political ideologies. I know we are in England, so we are celebrating World War I from that angle, those who served the Queen here, which is great. But there are Sikhs who also fought the British Empire at the same time. So we don't, it's like, if you're a Christian, are you just going to be a Tory or a Labour? I mean, that's kind of something you have to decide. It depends on, or a Liberal Democrat or whatever. Okay, sorry. New Dems, yes. So my point is, you actually process that, you know, it's a worldview. So I want to say Sikhs have been soldiers from, you know, if you don't watch, if you don't read, if you want to watch movies, if you watch Burmese harp, even when Japan and Korea are fighting in Burma, Sikhs are there as well. Some of them were on other sides, some were on this side, but I want to mention some were very independent. They are the ones who are fighting both empires. So my point is, we are like any other community. It comes down to how do you view the world, how do you interpret your ideology. But Sikhs definitely were soldiers, but that's also our stereotype, so I want to put something there. We are not just soldiers. This is one of the biggest stereotypes. We are also poets. All gurus were, nobody talks about how in the court of the guru there were 52 poets. So I just want to mention that we are like any other community. We have great writers, we have great industrialists, we have great designers, we also have great soldiers. Yes?
About the great link that the Sikh religion has got to social justice. I'm from the Green Party in Leicester, and I wanted to ask about the environment.
Sure.
What about the Sikh connection with the environment and global rights for humans as well as, you know, the environment?
Thank you for asking that. Climate change is one of the biggest issues in the world. And New York City just had the first People's March on the climate change, which was very interesting for me to observe being in that area, because I saw how when something becomes popular, everyone shows up. I'll give a Sikh response, then a commentary on it a little bit, maybe a short answer. Sikh response is, part of our scripture maintains, and this is exact word, I mean, paraphrasing a bit, because you can't fully translate exactly. It says, this is our spirituality now, that the wind, the air, the wind, the earth, and the water, they are like your guru, which means your coach, your father, and your mother. So the question for us is, why are we harnessing them? The question is, how do we become harmonious with them? Now, Sikhs say this every day. They used to practice it, but just like any other community, we are not thinking about what that means for us anymore. So social justice, climate change included, is not something which we do as an NGO work. It's built into our spirituality. It's a prayer we repeat every day. We are being asked to do not abuse or harness the natural resources, yet figure out how to live in harmony with it. Now, a little comment on because when everything is popular, things join in, right? So, you know, the interesting thing is, this is what is happening to all movements in the world. Maybe that's my politics. This is not about Sikhi. Yeah. You know, the people who paid for that march are the very people who are creating the most environmental damage. So don't believe the hype, as they say. This is very interesting stuff. So when I went to the real activists and listened to their speeches, they're like, you know, we want to show up where BP is not the one bringing the parties to talk at climate change. You see how the world is getting there now? So there are some serious issues in the way issues are being handled, and same applies within the Sikh community. There are serious issues in how even we are handling them, because we are like any other human beings. We are going through our own struggles. Thanks for asking.
Good afternoon. I'm from the UKIP, which is nothing to do with the Liberal Democrats at all, although we're trying very hard to replace them in Downing Street and hope to be there around about May next year. Thank you for inviting all of us. It's been very interesting. You spoke about harassment and injustice and the Sikh position with regard to harassment and injustice. Were you thinking of Sikhs getting involved in defending other Sikhs from harassment and injustice, or were you thinking in terms of Sikhs defending others around the world from harassment and injustice? And then if we step on from there to ISIS and the atrocities being committed in Syria and Iraq, would the Sikh community be in favour of the UK putting more military presence on the ground to defend these people?
Anything I have mentioned, this is not for Sikhs doing it for Sikhs. In fact, the whole history from day one is it was done for others. Now, if Sikhs are going through it, of course they need to do it for themselves as well, right? But the whole policy, the whole practice of it was for non-Sikhs. So my general statement to Sikhs is, and I'll repeat it here, Guru Nanak didn't come here to solve Sikh problems, he was solving people's problems. So that's what we are. It's all really about others. Now, if we are not stepping up today, Sikhs should be challenged to do that, because that's what our dictum is. That's our ideology. Second part is more of a policy question, and that's something, I am not a UK citizen. The UK Sikhs, need to have a serious deliberations on what should be the Sikh position on it. And the UK Sikh Council can do it. There are other organizations here. Sikh Federation is here. Basics of Sikh. Other people are here. But my point is, our process used to be, we used to deliberate. Now, I'll mention something here. Maybe it might not be as politically acceptable, but I'll say it anyway. The problem is we have stopped deliberations ourselves. And I'm encouraging Sikhs who are sitting here to sit on the table and fight out, in a true sense of consensus building, what should be the position. And that deliberation, because our deliberations have stopped at our center, because states are not allowing it, and it has filtered down in 2 generations now that we have also stopped deliberating. We are trying to revive that. We actually are doing workshops. A lot of UK Sikhs were involved in it. We did it at Oxford as well. The point is, every local issue must be deliberated. We are not that we are with this party or that party. It should be what is the right position at this point in time, knowing the fundamentals of our ideology.
A little bit to Harinder's answer, because as a member of the Sikh Council UK, and obviously many of you already know the host from Leicester Sikh Alliance, we've got Amandeep Singh Rai there. What we're trying to do as Sikhs in the UK is actually make sure we do have a voice. And last week we had our last General Assembly where we were kind of putting together the Sikh manifesto. And one of the things that we really want Sikhs in the UK to do is actually vote with conscience. So where we do have an opportunity in the election that's coming forward, or in any of the local council elections, or in the European elections, as an immigrant group, sometimes, number one priority is to get yourself economically stable. And perhaps the first generation of Sikhs have worked very, very hard to create that footprint for themselves. Now that we're comfortable and feeling empowered, we are very conscious as a community that we want to make sure our youngsters and all of the community is participative in local politics, because it is only through being engaged through local matters, through national matters, through international matters, that the community then becomes completely ingrained and actually empowered to influence change. So I think the answer to the question is we're actually asking as a council that Sikhs, wherever they are within the UK, should actually be thinking about the issue. As we've said, it's all about working with your conscience, identifying with the cause, but the Sikh ethos is to fight for justice. So if there is injustice, then we should be fighting that. How you fight it and who you think will fight the best is probably something for individual choice.
If you wish to fight injustice and you want to vote for what you believe in, and you want to vote for common sense, then step one has to be voting for UKIP.
Raised probably one of the best questions in my opinion so far. And the reason is this: until the Sikhs are relevant to issues in UK, we are not relevant. And this is the issue migrant communities are facing everywhere, we are also facing. Until, in America I say, until we are working on America is the largest incarceration of prisoners in the world, percentage-wise. And Sikhs are not relevant to it, whereas two of our gurus fought for prisoners' rights. Right? So there is something, there is a gap there. So we have to be relevant to the literature here, the culture here, and bring ourselves, although we are the new kids on the block, we got to bring our ideology and present here is another option to look at the world.
Harinder, I'd like to just kind of come back to this question of interfaith and the kind of relationship between the Sikhs and other faith groups. I'm trying to kind of, you set out that the Sikh is a social movement, a movement of conscience, and kind of ethical, and all these questions. If we go to Nanagarna Sahib, where Guru Nanak, his birthplace, you'll find thousands of Muslims worshipping in that place, looking after that place, and other shrines. If you go to the Darbar Sahib, you will find maybe more non-Sikhs going to the Golden Temple. So who does Sikhism belong to? To the Sikhs or to the world?
Sure. I mean, we can, let's present a multi-pronged answer to that, because it's a very, what should I say, a very heavy question. So according to Guru Granth Sahib, the gurus, who we call gurus, the founders, and as I said, guru for us is not just an expert, it's more of a life coach kind of an idea. We believe it's also perfection. It's awesome wisdom, actually. It says they were world teachers. So that should be very easy. It says the Jagat Guru, which means they're world teachers. So their access is to everyone. And it is. Now, just because you are learning from somebody doesn't mean you follow everything they say. So those who follow the system, they become the Sikhs. But the accessibility is, it's like Augustine is accessible to me. Sir Thomas More is accessible to me, right? Similarly, I'm reading Persian poets. They're accessible to me because I choose to learn from them. I like Rumi, I like Jami, I read Al-Ghazali as well. Similarly, I read Indian poets, whether they're Hindus or whoever, or philosophers. So accessibility is to all, and we have actually implemented that even in our institutions. Like Darbar Sahib, it's accessible to all. But when it comes to running it, when it comes to representing the Sikh interests, obviously it can only be those who follow the system, not just the ones who just appreciate it. It's like if I want to go and appreciate I'm a funder to Amnesty, doesn't mean I'll go walk up there and say I want to be your president. I got to go through their circuit. Which campaigns have you run? What have you done? How many letters have you written? Which governments have blacklisted you? I'm sure there'll be a list of things, right? So that's how it works among Sikhs. How much of that weight or responsibility you are carrying if you want to represent Sikhs. So it's just like anything else in life, guys. Accessible to all, but it's open to anyone and everyone, regardless of skin, gender, class, whatever you want to call it. Those who want it, it's open. That's been the criteria, and we better keep it open. Otherwise, we might become something else.
I have to, before I pass it on to the next question,
Sure.
I have to share a very amusing tale because one of my very best friends at work is a very staunch Catholic, strong believer, but is also very open to talking about mysticism and spirituality and matters thereof. And he had been looking at the Sri Guru Granth Sahib online, and he sent me an email. This is in the middle of a very busy work day. And he sent me an email saying, there's a line I read here I don't understand. Can you explain it to me? And the particular line that he had picked was actually from Bhakt Kabir. And so Bhakt Kabir actually came from a Sufi Muslim background, and his works are enshrined within the Sri Guru Granth Sahib. And it was a very funny situation that a Sikh woman explaining to a Catholic man what a Sufi Muslim might have been thinking in the early 12th century. So very inclusive.
A few observations and then one or two questions.
Sure.
Yes, Sikhism is basically for the fight against any kind of injustice and for a fair society. You were mentioning killing of thousands of women or missing women. In 2011 census of India, Punjab is the worst in female foeticide. Number one, that's my observation. Also, I'm a bit confused about most of the time this political narrative link with India most of the time. If is in Sikh DNA to protest against any kind of injustice, then locally in Leicester, 46% of 46% children are below poverty line in Leicester only, and in UK, most of the ethnic minority community, they are below poverty line. Okay, I can't see any kind of protest, any kind of voice from Sikh community to fight against this kind of injustice. So I'm just wondering, most of the time, this is political narrative linked with India. Sorry.
So, because these questions are on several people's mind, and thank you for taking the initiative. On the first one, the female feticide issue, it's fully documented. It's not just your observation, it's the observations of most social scientists. And this is happening in India and in Punjab as well. And the reason it's happening is you have to go to what is being done about it and how it started. Sikhs are the ones who are actually championing it quite a bit. If you look at some of the villages where they have declared, if you have a girl, we will take care of her, not just the dowries which have created the problems, but her education, other things as well. Whenever there's a degeneration, degeneration doesn't look at what religion you claim to be. It looks at your behavior. Degeneration was in Guru Nanak's family too, I mentioned. That's why he said, I better make it my dictum. Guru Gobind Singh made it his dictum. You know, he has said, we have very few laws. of the 4 or 5 laws of what we are not supposed to do, one of them is you will not associate with the daughter killer. He made that a doctrine in 1699. I already admitted to you, every Sikh is not understanding these things and they're not following. We're like any other religion. So yes, this is a major problem. There are organizations working on it. This is a major problem in China. This is a major problem in India. I think you're just essentially saying, and which I'm agreeing with, this problem exists, we should fight it. Of course we should fight it, and there are Sikhs fighting it. Religious leaders included of other religions have come together in India to fight it as well. Second one, on the political narrative, I think I pretty much established to you, we are very political from day one. So I'm not going to shy away from saying we don't have a political, we have a very political narrative. We have politicians sitting here. We need to understand what politics is. Politics is art of impossible, right? You guys have heard of that? It's about governance. Guess what we are fighting? Art of impossible. The world at the time said it's illegal for low castes to sing classical music. I don't know how many of you realize, but this is political. I'm a huge fan of Indian classical music and Western and rap. So I love music at large. I go to a lot of concerts of Indian classical music even today. You know, even today, if you are not a Brahmin, you cannot sit and do a classical music concert. Either they have converted to Islam or they became Sikhs. So it is political. And Guru said, everything we read, no, don't shake your, give me an example. Can you name me a Ustad who is not a Brahmin? Name me one. Wait. Let me finish your answer. You're shaking because I'm giving you data. So it is political because I already said, Guru was fighting the hegemonic culture. He says, if you're going to say, I'm not going to be allowed to sing, I'm going to sing it. And he actually made, just so all of you know, our scriptural tradition, which has low caste, high caste, Hindu, Muslim, 98% of it is in classical music. So it is a direct challenge to that hegemonic caste system, which according to gurus, in today's parlance, is a legal apartheid. So yes, it is very, very political. You better believe it. And now second part of that, which I want to, you can do a follow-up, but let me answer it fully. See, when I look at the British accounts of the Sikhs, they also said we were very political. So it's not just about India. We are the benefactors of India. We died to protect India. We freed India. So it's not about India. It's about unjust policies. When British wrote about us, you know, when the British hired their people to write who Sikhs are, because they didn't understand us either. They're like, you know, these guys are a bit weird, man. The rest of the India, we understand. What are these guys up to? So they didn't hire one person or two person. They hired like 10 people. They hired a Muslim guy to tell us who we are, Bhutto Shah. They hired J.D. Cunningham, who was an officer in the British Army, to write about us. They hired a German linguist named Trump. Let's understand their scripture. They hired another guy named Macauliffe. Let's understand their oral tradition. Well, you guys are smart people. You rule the world, right? So they said, let's understand from multiple angles what these guys are. Guess what all of them say? They're like, these guys are too political. J.D. Cunningham calls us, they're fanatics. This is his word. I'm not saying it. Yes. It's because he looked at us. He's like, none of the Indians give a damn. Why do these guys give a damn? Macauliffe is writing the same thing, and he keeps writing, and he's on his 6th volume, and he has a change of heart. He's like, you know, I quit my job. They're asking me to write something which is not true, and he quit. Trump, although a lot of Sikhs don't like him, he was trying to write what the scripture is saying, but he messed up in some places. My point is, anyone who studies us, I already said that in the beginning, guys, it is very political. It is very uncomfortable for not just you, sir, for 90% of Sikhs, it is very uncomfortable. They start sweating when they start reading the scriptures. So most of them don't read it, that's why. They're like, oh my God, what is this being asked? I got to fight for people's rights? It is incredibly uncomfortable. But my job is, and I'm not saying I'm able to do all these things, my job is to tell you the story. And by the way, my coaches, I'll tell you who taught me to do this. When I was in Texas, I learned from all religious traditions, including Hindu, Muslim, whatever. But one of my life coaches was a young rabbi in Texas. I went up to Rabbi Block and I said, you know, again, I use the same phrase. I said, we are the new kids on the block. Teach me how you guys did it, man. Because, you know, everyone still blames you for everything, but you figured out how to tell your story. And this is what he said to me, and that's what I'm trying to do, even though it's uncomfortable. He said, you know, you only have one job. I used to be an aerospace engineer, and I'm trying to come into this world. You only have one job. You got to learn to tell your story, nobody will. You have to tell it firmly, don't apologize for it, but don't get angry also. You got to tell your story, because this is your story. So I'm telling you what I know from our scriptures, what I know from my history, and what the Sikhs are made out of. And whenever Sikhs have done this 70 years ago, just to put it in perspective, when British India was hanging Sikhs and Punjabis, the very same Indian national leaders, they were saying hang them. Yes, the Indian national leaders, when Bhagat Singh was being hanged, Jawaharlal Nehru and Mahatma Gandhi says hang them. So they have never supported it. But we don't look at, we still said we are freeing India. They are on record. Jawaharlal Nehru changed his statement in 1962. Sorry, not 52. My point is that Matthew Ward?
Hey, thank you very much. I'm John Ashworth. I'm the local Labour Member of Parliament, but I shan't use the occasion to ask for votes. Can I, first of all, pay tribute to you for, again, a brilliant lecture. I was here 2 or 3 years ago when you were in Leicester, in this building, in a smaller room, giving a lecture, and again, it's been extremely interesting and informative, so thank you for coming to Leicester today and giving us your time. And can I also pay tribute to the Leicester Sikh Alliance, who have been very involved in this event, but also, I believe, in the work that they do locally, implement the vision of Sikhi, which you have been talking about. And if I may for a moment just disagree with my good friend from the Council of Faiths ever so slightly, while of course it is correct that there are Sikhs in Leicester who have views and campaign on issues to do with India, the Leicester Sikh Alliance are indeed campaigning on the issues to do with child poverty that our friend is talking about, because it shames us in Leicester that we are a city with some of the highest levels of child poverty. So I just want to pay tribute to the Leicester Sikh Alliance, who raise food donations for the food banks and raise clothes donations for the clothes banks. And this just brings me on to what I think is one of the most beautiful aspects of the Sikh faith, and you've not touched upon it so much, and that is, although you've referenced it, which is langar. Anyone today can walk into any of our half a dozen or so fabulous gurdwaras and sit down and eat food together with people of the Sikh faith, of the Muslim faith, of the Christian faith, and with people of no faith. I do that often myself. Indeed, as many of my Sikh friends here will know, I often go in there not only to enjoy langar, but also to serve langar as well. And I think this is something which, and it's a plea more to the Sikh Council rather than to you, sir, and the other Sikh federations, when we are faced with the child poverty levels that sadly we have in Leicester and other cities, I think there is a role for the Sikh Council, and of course our government has to change policies, but let's just put that to one side. But I think there's a role for the Sikh Council, for Sikh organisations and for Gurdwaras to do even more, to shout more about the charitable work they do, to shout more about the fact that anyone can walk into a Gurdwara and eat. And I think if we could have a national campaign on that, I as a politician would support it. I know some of the other politicians here would support it as well. I think that would be very good for the Sikh faith, but I think it would go some way to helping some of the most vulnerable in society as well.
Thank you very much. I think I'd like to, that is a really valuable bit of feedback for us, and I think I just wanted to share for the community. Yes, Leicester Sikh Alliance, it not only is it very active, it's also got a very young, old, female balance. So I think we have a good representation. But just another couple of little snippets. I mean, Khalsa Aid, which is one of the affiliates of the Sikh Council, they are currently providing aid in Iraq because of the lack of food and clothing. And when we had the riots here in the UK, you probably saw some of our Sikh channels literally chasing after people and trying to really tell the story and help. And the Langar institution, when there have been floods and when we had the earthquake in Pakistan, the Golden Temple, the Harinder Singh, which is actually, maybe this isn't widely known, but it is actually the largest free distributor of food worldwide. There are, I don't even know the statistic, but it's hundreds of thousands of meals that are served free every day. And when there is crisis, then the Sikh institution comes together to provide langar. But yes, it's a very valuable suggestion. May I just for 1 minute, there's been somebody patiently waiting at this end. So I think if everybody is happy with us running over time a little bit, we started a little bit late, there is a lot of audience participation. So if I can just have a comment from this side, and then I'll bring the mic over. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. Thank you for knowledgeable. You have explained everything with your experience and knowledge. I'm from India. I was in India in late 70s and early 80s. Have experienced some of the things which I disagree with you. Please don't hate me afterwards, after this question. There is another religion called the Nirankaris. If you, with your knowledge, you probably know that when they had their big sammelan in Amritsar, my whole family was in it, right? Pindravari's followers actually went there, which wasn't explored here at all. I appreciate your explaining everything, that they are protecting themselves.
Yes.
But here, these people didn't have any guns or swords in their hands, right? They were slaughtered. They were really slaughtered. My family was very lucky that they left. I was unlucky to be there because I was in one village, one of the village called Vilaspur with my grandfather, having my holidays.
Guys,
right?
take it easy. Let's listen to every question, please. Let's be sensitive.
I,
Yes.
I really apologize if I offend
this is fine.
anybody,
Please
but this is
continue.
my experience
Sure.
that I would like to share with everybody. I am very, very shaky at the moment, right, because I'm not the person who talk in public like this, but I'd like to explore on this
Sure.
a little bit further.
Firstly, thank you for sharing that.
Right.
I mean, it's an open forum. There is no issue of any kind.
Goes
Yes.
to you
Yes.
that all the Sikh, in the Sikh Gurdwaras, from my granddad, I found out that all this is organized. There's going to be an attack on the Nirankaris on that day.
Yeah.
I don't belong to Nirankaris. I don't belong to Sikhism. I've come out of it. I understand a lot different now at this. I'm not against anybody, but I'd like your answer on this.
Absolutely.
What do you have to say about it?
Sir. First thing is, you see, we all have varieties of experiences. And I have been in enough public forums where this and much worse stuff comes out about slaughtering and things of that nature. First thing I want to say is I'm not countering anyone's experience here, but we have to come to some specifics. So I offer a few specifics to you in this instance. I also grew up in India. I was in India in 80s as well. And then I was a child, but I remember a lot of it. I remember watching in 84 when the Indian national TV comes and it says blood for blood and seeking revenge by killing Sikhs, and they burned my house as well. But I'm not going to let that emotion get to this issue which you brought. Now, what the issue you brought, here are the facts. And I ask you to go, please consider them. There is a procession being taken out in 1978 on a Vaisakhi day. Now, those of you, let me put a context around it. Context is this. Can you imagine, just imagine Vatican. In Vatican, let's say somebody who are considered heretics by Christians show up. Considered, I'm not saying they are. Let's say for argument's sake, you guys know what Latter-day Saints are, Mormons? Okay, let's say FLDS showed up. In Vatican, taking out a procession, saying as Jesus had 12 apostles, today we create our 12 prophets. Just imagine that. Why would they go to Vatican and do that? Now, why do I bring it up? This is what happened in Amritsar on Vaisakhi in 1978. She herself said Nirankari is a separate religion. Great. Why are you coming to Amritsar, which is not their center? Then taking out a procession, because Guru Gobind Singh said, as I made Panj Pyares, the 5 beloveds as we call them on the Vaisakhi day, the Nirankari head at the time said, I declare Sat Sitare. So this is enticing Sikhs. First, this is the context. Second, there was violence that day. Pindrawale, Akhand Kirtni Jatha, Damdami Taksal are some of the denominations. We have exact names available. They went there. Pindrawale actually said to them, people went to Pindrawale, who was a leader at the time, one of the leaders. There were several leaders at the time, and they said, we need to do something. This guy is, playing with fire here. He's basically making fun of us, making fun of our prophet. And why is he doing this? If you want to do it in your club. Why are you coming to Amritsar and doing this? And not only this, he took out a procession on an elephant. There was no Prakash of Guru Granth Sahib. Actually, they Prakashed it and he sat above it. So this is playing with the sentiments of the Sikh community, what we really hold dear. As you saw, this is not just Sikh community, it has Hindus and Muslims in it too, the scripture. In that context, they decided, we will peacefully protest. The Sikhs, that please don't take out this procession. If you want to do something in your own area, why are you making fun of Sikhs here? They peacefully protested. Police was brought in. There is not a single incident, and Punjab police does not record anything good for Sikhs. But on that incident, they recorded not a single violent act was committed by Sikhs. They actually killed 13 Sikhs. None of them were violated from the Nirankari side. You can raise it. Let me finish now, because I'm talking specifics. Can I finish the specifics? Virji, it's okay. Don't worry about it. 13 people were killed, all Sikhs, who were protesting peacefully. Not a single Nirankari killed by Sikhs. There is a case registered against the head of the Nirankari movement, which, by the way, is a split from the real Nirankaris. So this Nirankari, that's why I use the Mormon. There is LDS, there is RLDS, there is FLDS, if you know the Mormons, because I studied them too when I wanted to work in this field. So the real Nirankaris did not participate in that, the religious personalities. There is a split created by the Indian government and installed as the different Nirankaris. They are the ones who are doing it. So it's like a splinter planted by the government. Case is registered against the head of Nirankaris. In Punjab, the Punjab government's judiciary, the Punjab and Haryana High Court in Chandigarh decides, this is too sensational for Punjab. The Nirankari head will not, because they found him guilty actually. They filed case against him. Why were you doing this ruckus here? They said, this place is too sensational. Why don't we move the case? They moved it outside Punjab. So again, jurisdiction was removed. And then they found him not guilty. So specifics of that incident are this.
So, thank you. Thank you very much for your views. We're quite happy to interact afterwards. I'm conscious there are a few other people who do want to make comments. The purpose of today's discussion is actually to propagate an understanding and grow a positive message. So I just want to keep to that. Can I pass it on to you, Matthew?
Hi, I'm Matthew Ward. I'm a historian and a broadcaster. Thank you very much for inviting me here today. This chap at the front raised a question, and I take issue with him on that question, that there is a simple binary choice to be made all the time. His binary choice was, should we bomb or should we not bomb a certain group of people in Syria and Iraq? But the question was actually answered in a much better and positive way by reference to Khalsa aid. There is more than one way to fight injustice. ISIS have arisen because of injustice, because of disunity. So we don't always have to say there is only one choice, there is only one question. So I would call on not just the Sikh community, but all people in Britain, not just to answer the questions, but to ask the questions and to set the agenda. Because if we look at another case in Scotland, there was a big disagreement over the nature of the question that they should ask themselves. Should we be an independent state or not? They argued for ages about the right question to ask, and they never had any agreement on that. So what we need to do is, as you've said, set the agenda, agree amongst ourselves what the questions are, and then move forward from there. And Khalsa aid is a really good example of that.
So that's a great point.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
The reason I didn't bring up Langar earlier, and I will take up you, because you see, my job is to move the next agenda. Langar has already become a status quo for Sikhs, right? I'm looking at how can Langar be utilized to create some policy changes. So Khalsa, what you have brought up is, by the way, Guru Nanak's practice was this. He had dialogue with every party, and which is what Sikhs love to do. We actually have dialogues with every party. Sometimes we fail, but that's our tradition. And after the dialogue, if there are disagreements, then you go pursue what you need to pursue. So dialogue is the answer, and we know this, whether it's in the Scotland's case or whether there have been rebellious movements anywhere in the world. Why are they fighting? Because they want an equal seat at the table to discuss what the answer should be. And this is what I was saying earlier. There is instability because there are second and third class citizens. And our fight is to remove that instability by allowing a seat on the table so they're a party to discussion. Thank you.
To just say thank you to Matthew for raising that point earlier about langar and the fact that we're not very good at speaking up about ourselves, and especially what Harinder's point was, unless you tell your own story, then it's not going to get told. Which is why I wanted to bring your attention. It's not really a plug as much as it is just making you aware that we are trying to do something about things like that. And on the 1st to the 7th of November, quite a lot of organisations in the UK coming together for something called National Langar Week, where we're just going to be trying to get this word langar, pronounced langar, into the dictionary. It's already in the dictionary, but get it into the people's mindset. So people know, the people don't know the word langar, but they might have a concept that there is free food at a gurdwara. In 2008, that word got entered into the English Oxford Dictionary, and we're hoping that henceforth, by getting all the Sikhs together nationally to invite the British public into the Gurdwara from the 1st to the 7th, that we'll actually get this word into common usage. So National Langar Week. And the aim of the Sikh Press Association is literally to get Sikh events into the media. I'm not very good at that as well. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, Matthew, we are working on it.
While we are on the topic of langar, because I am always pushing the agenda. In Guru Granth Sahib, when the word langar comes in, first invocation is on Shabad, which is wisdom, that you need to deliberate, and then second usage is for the physical food. So we are really being asked to think about what you're doing, because we are supposed to be serving. When langar is being served to Yazdi women in Iraq, it makes a lot of sense. When America, they are feeding it on the Capitol Hill, I don't know what that's doing. That's my point, and I want to raise that. My job is to raise those questions. Like for poverty, we need to be fighting. So yes, we need to tell the people, yes, I understand why it needs to get done, but 68% of Indian population is below the poverty line. Economist did an article last year, only reason we have world hunger is because the greed of the nations. It's the first time in the history we actually have enough food in the world, but because of the policies nations have adopted, we are not able to feed people. So we need to fight those policies, which is deliberation. I bring it back to, if we don't deliberate properly, even the physical act of langar can be reduced only to PR, and that's a problem in itself.
To gain your opinion on the ongoing misinformative rhetoric with regards to human rights in the UK, with the certain political parties and the press decrying the Human Rights Act and wanting to withdraw from the ECHR, and the rhetoric that is coming out from certain quarters with regards to this?
So I don't have specific understandings of those cases, because as much as I would like to delve into it, it's not my area. But here is what a Sikh position is on these kind of ideas as a process, which is what I'm after, that we have a lot of Sikh lawyers in each country now. I'm pushing them to join organizations like yours, or Human Rights Watch, or Physicians for Human Rights, or MRGI, or Redress, so they can bring the contributions from a Sikh perspective. Now, as a community, we need to do some stuff as well. But the thing is that Sikhs need to join these organizations, because otherwise these organizations are also being critiqued, by the way, and you are very aware of it. We had some discussion on it earlier. Amnesty and Human Rights Watch, they're also being critiqued. Okay. Who are they really critiquing in the world these days? So yes, I think Sikhs will have a contribution there. So we need Sikh lawyers in these countries, not just to join what we call the financial districts or the Wall Streets, but to join some of the organizations who are vigilant about human rights situations, not just in the third world, but in the developed nations where they're being violated pretty aggressively as well.
Council, that one of the things that we're really trying to understand a little bit better and hopefully get more participative in, but in the UK, for example, we have had the Mandla case, some rights that because some personal experience of what it is to fight for the right to be what you want to be, and obviously watching the European Court of Human Rights and some of the decisions, I think it is yet another area where I think more active engagement and understanding of the framework is required so that you do actually get a protection for the human right. Yes. Exactly, yeah.
It is being
Thank
done.
you.
Just so you
Thank
know, I'm involved in the curriculum development world for the Sikh world against anyone in India. And in collaboration with that, then we developed 4 lesson plans on what we should be teaching Sikh children about human rights as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Thank
so
you very
the
much.
efforts are there. Our work is cut out, though. You're absolutely right.
Time. I know the gentleman on my right wanted to have a word, so I'm going to make this the final public question, and then we will have opportunity to continue talking to the next hour as we network. So if I can ask this to be the final question. Thank you.
I'm Alan Hayes. I've been interested for many, many years in education. And the way in which we are educating our children is of concern to me, principally because we are separating our children by religion. Now, this is something that I could develop at length, but let me just take one example. I live in a part of Leicester where there is a Hindu school. This is a free school, and it has to have 50% of its places open to non-Hindus. But because of the way in which it teaches, practically no non-Hindus are going there. Now, there is a Sikh school about to come into, I think in fact it started. How are we going to ensure that our children know one another? Not know about the religion, but know Sikhs, know Muslims, and so on. This is absolutely vital. And it's vital in the following way. If we go to the situation in Birmingham, a Muslim population has felt that because of the way in which we have privileges for the Church of England and so on, therefore, they should have their schools act as extensions of their religion. Mm-hmm. And the consequence is that we're getting children who are getting no experience of others at all. What you're going to do with, we are stuck with the schools that we have, so we've got Falcon School. What are you going to do about Falcon School that will make it possible for people who are not Sikhs to send their children to the school?
I think it's an excellent question. It's a very open-ended question which is pertinent to all communities of faith and non-faith. I think this question is now being raised more, and I'm very sensitive to this because I intentionally send my kids to non-Sikh schools. Yeah, but we don't have too many in America. There are few popping up here and there. Because I grew up in a secular schools. I actually went to Catholic schools too. You know, from St. Mary's to St. Joe's, and you can imagine what the sisters used to do there. Yeah? The point is, this debate is actually open to wider public. But there is one hypersensitive concern I do have, that now this debate is taking more shape when the non-Judeo-Christian heritage schools are opening up. Christian schools have been there by denominations. So maybe we can learn from some of them, not all of them, because some of them did very bastardized stuff as well, which we know all, but some of them created great value systems as well. I went to one of them. My point is, this is a discussion topic for every community. We need to really think about how now to ghettoize our minds for our children, and there needs to be serious deliberation at the school boards of educations and educational reform policies on this. How are we going to ensure that they're not going to become even more insular rather than the global citizens which the world is demanding these days? But it's an open debate.
Relevant question these days, and whenever new faith schools are granted by the DFE, they also ask this question. And unless you prove that your school is going to be all-inclusive, you are never given a school. I.e., the Hindu school or the Sikh school must have proved in their application with the interviewer that they are all-inclusive schools, A. Now, B thing is that when 1/3 schools in the UK, in England preferably, England, 22,000 schools are there in England. Out of 22,000, 7,000 are faith schools, 1/3 are faith schools. It's established history. And out of that, 6,580 something are Christian schools. it comes to 98%. Only 2% are from the minor community. And when a school is given to minor community, people always raise hue and cry why they have been given. They are segregating, isolation, all those. When it comes to the majority community, it is never isolation. Though they teach the religion, whatever.
So we have already covered that. So that's fine.
It's like that. Now, why the majority community does not send their children to the new faith schools, i.e. whether it's Hindu school, whether it's Sikh school, they should be proactive to send their children 50%, fill that 50% and make the school as inclusive. Why are you shying out? Why don't you send your children?
So
this is my question to you.
Here is historical. We have opened up Khalsa schools throughout Punjab, throughout India, throughout Asia, including in Indonesia, just so you know, 100 years ago even. The model was very different, and I offer that for Sikhs to think about it and maybe non-Sikhs to consider. Actually, in Khalsa schools and Khalsa colleges, believe it or not, they had Gurdwara, they had Mandir, they also had mosque where there were Muslim students. The world hasn't seen this, but Sikhs have practiced it. The Khalsa school was run by the Khalsas, but actually it was what you will call a multi-faith schools, where for their divinity classes or for their hour of prayer, they went to their prayer sections. I think world is waiting for these ideas again. We don't need to, in our own inferiority or superiority complexes, go out of our way. I think we should look at kind of models we presented in South Asia. And I said even we went to Indonesia. My director of education where I work, her grandfather is the one who started the one in Indonesia. That's how I knew about it. So there are some offerings, which hence it speaks to what I was speaking earlier. There are some serious deliberations Sikhs have gone through. And we have offered them as solutions which are not coming out to the world. And we all need to revisit some of those as well. So in today's context, it would mean having an atheist children equal place on that table. Having a homosexual children having an equal place on that table. This is the discussion needed today. It's not just about religious personalities anymore. It's about how do you assure harmony in a world of incredible difference.
Harinder Singh, thank you so much. I think I have to thank the audience and I have to apologize to all because I think we could go for another couple of hours because there is a very active participation. And I think the issues and the discussion that we've had today is actually the discussion that Amandeep, when he rang me to ask whether I would chair the session, his request was very much, we want to have a cross-community discussion in this year where we're commemorating the memories of those who laid down their lives in the Great War. We're commemorating 3 decades after the genocide for Sikhs. We're living in a world where thousands are dying as we speak, where there is child poverty, where there is misunderstanding and conflict. It is our responsibility, every one of us, to look at ourselves and judge ourselves first, and to build a community that actually respects itself and others equally. And I think this discussion today, I am actually greatly enriched by the conversation that we've had because we do have a colorful mix. And I do thank everyone for being frank and open because, of course, every story has 2 sides. But if you look at, and this is what history allows us to do, it allows us to stand back and take perspective. And from that perspective, you must draw lessons. And I think the lessons for us are very much around understanding what brings us together and what is our divine mission as human beings and to draw together. And whether that is in the schools where children have to learn to respect each other, where adults need to understand each other. And I think what we are trying to offer today from a Sikh perspective is that opportunity to perhaps lay down the myths a little bit, because sometimes people see, the long beards and the turbans, and in this day and age, I'm going to say it, the word fanatic and terrorist gets as associated with the Sikh image that it does with any other. And of course, that's not what it stands for. We look the way we look because that's the way God made us, and we kind of like that, so we keep it. And of course, I'm a Sikh woman, so hopefully I'm not too intimidating either. I wanted to say thank you, and I'd like to hand over to Amandeep Singh Rai, who is our lead from Leicester Sikh Alliance, and thank you so much. If I can give it to you for wrap up.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to say a couple of words, not take too long at all. Firstly, again, just apologise for everybody for it running over. Just want to thank everybody for taking time out from their weekends to be here. There's a lot of prominent personalities and activists and organisations and individuals here, and we're really humbled and appreciative that you guys took the time out to be here. And also, I would like to thank the Sikh Council UK for choosing Leicester as their venue of choice in the Midlands to hold their very first seminar outside of London. So that's really appreciated. And the second thing I wanted to say was, what was very heartening for me was this concept, and this is why we had this Q&A at the end. Even though it can be very risky to do within this kind of environment, but we believe in dialogue. And I'm really grateful for the perceived difficult questions that may have got asked here in an open environment in front of everybody. And it was done in a very nice way. Both sides were listened to, and I think dialogue is so important. It's what Guru Nanak did. He travelled half of the world dialoguing with various religious people and communities at their religious centres. He went east, west, north, south. He's travelled as far as Rome, and it's been documented at the Vatican. So it's really important to have that, and I'm really appreciative. And again, to everybody, thank you for coming. There's going to be a little bit of networking happening at the end now. We ran over, but cheers. Thank you for coming. Take care.